Today, I'm announcing a comprehensive new approach to make Canada the world's leading energy superpower. Canada has just redirected 900,000 barrels of oil per day to Asia, signaling a massive shift in the global oil market that no one saw coming, and the United States is being left behind. For decades, Canadian oil flowed like a river across the border, offering a stable and reliable energy source to the US, but those days are ending. Canada is no longer the friendly neighbor, it's now a strategic competitor. With the Trans Mountain project set to be completed in 2025, nearly 900,000 barrels of oil per day will head not to the US, but to Asia, especially China, Japan, and India. This shift could feel like a massive wave sweeping away a large portion of America's energy treasure, as 61% of the oil America imports from Canada in 2024 will no longer be available, leading to rising gas prices projected to hit $4 a gallon by the fall of 2025. Picture yourself filling up your tank and suddenly realizing prices have spiked. That's the reality many Americans may soon face. The US oil market will experience a severe shortage, with Gulf Coast refineries hit especially hard. This won't just result in higher fuel prices but could also disrupt production across multiple sectors, affecting millions of energy workers. Industries like transportation, food production, and goods manufacturing will see skyrocketing costs, directly impacting consumer wallets. Canada isn't merely shifting its oil flow to Asia, it's mastering the global energy game. Through long-term contracts with China, Japan, and India, Canada is boosting its economic and geopolitical influence in Asia, while simultaneously freeing itself from US trade pressures. While the US focused on tariffs and protectionism, Canada quietly built strong relationships in Asia where energy demand is soaring, emerging as a key player in global trade. Now, the US faces a new, powerful competitor. With oil making up such a significant portion of US imports, this change is deeply consequential. The tariffs previously imposed by the US have unintentionally pushed Canada closer to China, forming an economic alliance the US can't easily undo. If Washington escalates sanctions or takes aggressive measures instead of addressing the issue, both nations risk entering a damaging trade war that would bring serious losses to both sides. American oil producers could face dangerous supply shortages, while consumers would be burdened by significantly higher fuel costs. These shifts would ripple into sectors like transportation, food processing, and manufacturing, forcing the US to reevaluate its trade and energy strategies entirely. The Canada-US relationship will never be the same again. Canada's pivot to Asia will not only shake the US but will also cause global reverberations. Countries like Russia, Saudi Arabia, and Iran won't remain passive. They'll seek ways to capitalize on this shift and gain ground in the energy industry. But do they have the strength to compete with China, a nation that is slowly but surely dominating the global oil market? Meanwhile, the loss of Canadian oil will compel the US to either seek new partners or ramp up domestic production, but the real question is whether these adjustments can be made quickly enough to prevent a deeper energy crisis. Who would have thought that Canada, known for maple syrup and polite apologies, would one day say, nope, to the US when it comes to oil? It almost sounds like a Hollywood movie, but this could very well become reality. Consider this, 60% of the oil the US imports comes from Canada, that's around 4 million barrels a day. It's like the US is sipping oil from Canada every morning like a strong cup of coffee. And why? Because Canadian oil is heavy and perfectly suited for US Gulf Coast refineries. But here's the twist, Canada is done playing the loyal partner. Now, it's eyeing Europe like a new flame, with a look that says, oh hello, you look like you need some oil. There's talk of repurposing pipelines and accelerating LNG, liquefied natural gas, development to meet Europe's energy needs, all within a climate-conscious framework. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is leading the charge, making it clear that if the US wants to play tough, Canada is more than ready to start sending oil to Europe. Alberta currently sends 700,000 barrels a day to the Gulf Coast, essentially fueling the US refining system. If that flow is disrupted, the US might have to rely on less reliable sources like Venezuela, and we all know that doesn't hit the same. While US leaders claim, we're energy independent, the truth is they still rely heavily on Canadian oil. If Canada pulls back, gas prices in regions like New England could jump by 20 to 40 cents per gallon. And it's not just oil, Canada also supplies over 11,000 gigawatt-hours of electricity to the US annually. Could the US replace that? Possibly, but only by depending on imports from Venezuela or the Middle East, or by waiting for Elon Musk to invent brain-powered electricity. This entire scenario reflects a full-blown tit-for-tat, fueled in part by former President Trump's trade war with Canada. Trump reinstated tariffs on Canadian steel, dairy, and cars, and Canada fired back by targeting US ethanol, a key fuel that American farmers count on, and which Canada has been purchasing for its clean energy programs. If Canada pulls that plug, American farmers, particularly in places like Iowa, could take a serious hit. Meanwhile, Europe, desperate for a stable energy partner after cutting ties with Russia, is turning to Canada. In March 2025 alone, Canada exported 8 million barrels of oil to the EU, double from the previous quarter. The EU may be Canada's rebound partner, but it could quickly turn into a long-term love. Canada's glow-up is real, no longer the quiet girl next door, it's now a major player on the world energy stage. And it's not just oil. Canada also holds valuable uranium for clean nuclear power, rare minerals for electric vehicles, and clean electricity that could power the entire US grid. This energy mix makes Canada a key influencer in a post-fossil fuel world, potentially becoming the Switzerland of energy, neutral but absolutely essential. So the question now is, if Canada fully changes course, will the US come crawling back, or will it look for a new partner, like Venezuela? Buckle up, because this energy storm is just beginning. To top it all off, former President Trump has hinted at pursuing a third term, saying he wasn't joking, and his return to the Capitol triggered massive political and financial chaos. The moment Air Force One landed in Washington, it brought with it a storm. Trump's statement immediately sent global markets into a tailspin. As he suggested that all countries would be included in new economic measures, the US dollar wobbled, and the Nasdaq, Dow Jones, and S&P 500 all plunged. Hundreds of billions of dollars were wiped out overnight. With Trump back in the spotlight and the economy sinking further into recession, the energy conflict between Canada and the US could mark the start of a much larger geopolitical unraveling. Trump is still enthusiastically sketching out a vision of a boomtown USA, a golden age that seemingly only he can see. Despite being a former president, Trump does not hesitate to express his desire for a third and even a fourth term, ignoring the clear limits set by the US Constitution. I don't want to talk about a third term now, he says, because, no matter how you look at it, we got a long time to go. We have almost 4 years to go, and that's a long time. Yet, he continues, so many people are saying you've got to run again. They love the job we're doing. Most importantly, they love the job we're doing. The world has every right to question a leader openly entertaining the idea of overriding constitutional law and consolidating indefinite power, clear markers of a self-proclaimed dictator. While top politicians spar over words, the American people are left to suffer the real-world consequences. Trump's ambitions don't stop with internal politics. He has declared economic war on America's closest allies, including Canada. We don't need energy from Canada. We don't need lumber from Canada. We don't need anything from Canada. We don't need cars from Canada. As an example, he stated, taking direct shots at North American trade and security ties. This is more than harsh rhetoric, it's a deliberate fracturing of relations with the G7 nations. Furthermore, Trump doesn't limit his trade policy hostility to allies, he views global tariffs as a power play. The whole world will be taxed, he declared. That one statement sent markets into panic, with fears of a worldwide recession growing as the US threatens to weaponize its economy. As the global financial system watches with concern, the American economy is already blinking red. The Q1 GDP forecast for this year shows a contraction of 2.8%, with the Atlanta Federal Reserve openly warning that a recession has begun. For the first time in years, US stock markets have fallen behind Europe's in a single week, an alarming signal of an economy in distress. And yet, Trump brushes off these warnings with a wave of nostalgia and detachment. I haven't heard that term in years. I don't know anything about it, he says about stagflation, a toxic combination of inflation and recession, before doubling down with promises of a booming America. We're going to have Boomtown USA. For the American public, watching a leader ignore crisis signs while their bills grow heavier is unnerving. Meanwhile, within his administration, there is a disturbing silence and lack of accountability. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, who is in charge of a plan called Liberation Day, has refused to speak to the media or explain anything to the public. Fox News, long considered Trump's media ally, is now spending airtime discussing whether he should be carved into Mount Rushmore, even as the country stumbles into economic peril. Trump's boldest new move is a 20% global tariff on all imports, a jaw-dropping figure that's shaking economists and investors alike. This isn't just America first, this is Smoot-Hawley 2.0, a callback to the disastrous 1930 tariff policy that helped drag the US into the Great Depression. Mark Zandi, chief economist at Moody's Analytics, minced no words. There's no good case here, just dark variations on a dark theme. According to Zandi, if this plan were implemented immediately, the unemployment rate could spike from the current 4% to over 7%, plunging the country into a deep recession. Even a lighter version of the plan, with tariffs limited to specific countries, would still see average rates hit 15%, enough to derail the economy. Tariffs, in theory, increase government revenue. But as Zandi warns, the reality is that before the government sees a single dollar, the damage is already done: job losses, falling incomes, reduced consumer spending, and collapsing business revenues, all of which undercut income and corporate tax revenues. At the same time, the government's financial burden balloons, with rising costs for unemployment benefits, food aid, SNAP, housing subsidies, and aid for farmers hurt by global retaliation. Zandi sums it up: think about the hit to other taxes. Income taxes will be down, corporate income tax will be down, sales taxes will be down, while spending shoots up. The panic isn't confined to the US. Mexico, America's closest trade partner, has been sending high-level delegations to Washington weekly, desperate to negotiate. Julian Ventura, Mexico's former deputy foreign minister, warns, "We know that tariffs impact consumer mindset, markets, investors. There's definitely going to be a hit." With 14 million jobs supported by the US-Mexico supply chain, any disruption sends shockwaves not only through manufacturing but also the labor market and consumer confidence. Canada isn't waiting idly either. Ottawa has activated its emergency response plan for the first time in decades. This marks a dramatic deterioration in US-Canada relations. When Trump declared Liberation Day, the day America was allegedly freed from trade barriers, Wall Street didn't celebrate. Instead, the market plunged, investors bolted, and analysts warned that America was resurrecting the very policies that helped cause the Great Depression. And then came the press conference that shook the nation. In just 4 minutes, the White House's chief spokesperson, Caroline Leavitt, left the public more confused than informed. When asked why Trump warned automakers not to raise prices if tariffs were supposedly helping the economy, she answered vaguely, "That was a private conversation. I'm not sure if that comment was made." As for the leak of classified military documents via a messaging platform, her curt response was, "The case is closed and the president continues to have confidence in his national security advisor." No further information. Veterans and military families were left outraged, demanding answers that never came. Then came the economic gaslighting. A reporter asked if retired Americans were concerned about the wild stock market swings and shrinking retirement savings due to tariff instability. Leavitt dodged again, offering no solution, only vague promises that President Trump is implementing the same economic formula that worked before. Meanwhile, GDP has contracted by 3.8%, down from a plus 3.9% projection just 2 months earlier. When pressed on whether the president was comfortable with rising prices on foreign cars, Leavitt turned to blame the prior administration and repeated, "We're saving taxpayers' money. Unleashing the might of our energy industry, but tariffs raise prices, that's a fact." Even Fox News seemed to lose patience, urging, "We got to do 100% buy-in over this bumpy period, just communicate." Things turned darker when the issue of deportation came up. A father from Maryland, legally protected and with no criminal record, was deported to El Salvador and now sits in a gang prison. When questioned, Leavitt asked coldly, "Who does that judge work for?" The answer was that it was a Department of Justice immigration judge. Yet Leavitt insisted, "We are eradicating Mississippi 13, despite the deported man having no such ties." Even J.D. Vance, a Trump supporter, falsely blamed Biden, although the court ruling to protect this man came in 2019, under Trump. The contradictions are too stark, the consequences too real, and the trust too far gone. Don't blink, because the next move could change everything.